What's up, everyone? Today we'll look into how to call and consume APIs in Flutter. So before starting, let me give you a brief information about what API is. API is known as Application Programming Interface. Generally, it's used when we need some information from our backend services. We get the data back in JSON and we can then consume it and use it in our application, right? Now for this project, I'm going to use a dummy API call. So if you go to this URL, I'll link this in the description. It returns us a JSON, and each it's an array of, basically you can say, photos, and for each photos there is the album ID, there is the normal photo ID, title, URL, thumbnail, URL, right? So what I'm going to do for this project is I'm going to hit this API with Flutter, and then once I get this data, I'm going to display it on our screen, right? Now in order to make things in a modular format, I'm going to create a new class called photo in my case, which will store everything. So we have fields like album ID, title, URL, thumbnail. Okay. Why is it giving me error? Okay. Final string URL, final string thumbnail URL. Okay. Now inside this we are going to create a constructor. Now constructor obviously is going to take fields. Why this formatting is going this way? Okay. It's going to take, sorry, yeah, it's gonna take required. We need this dot album ID, so we'll pass this. We need required this dot ID, will pass it. We need required this dot title, required this dot URL, and then required this dot thumbnail URL. Okay. Once this is done, now our constructor is done, I'm gonna create a factory method. So this method, what it's gonna do is, basically when we get our data in JSON format, I'm gonna fetch each and every element, and I'm gonna map that JSON element to this photo class object that we have here. So it will be easy to use it in our application. So that's what I'm gonna do using a factory method. You will see how I call this from the API function that I will write after this. So this will be album ID, JSON album. Just take this ID, title, URL, thumbnail, URL. It's a long name, who wants to type it out? Okay, that's fine, we'll do formatting later. Okay, so once this is done, so I think our photo class is ready. Now I'm gonna create a method inside my home page state here only. Let everything else be like that, we don't need to use them, but we are gonna create a method fetch photos. Now I am calling it a future because hitting an API, it's gonna be an asynchronous call, right? So we don't know how much time it's gonna take to get the data. So it's better to have it as a sync. URI, now URI would be this. Let me take this. Okay, and then we'll have final response. URI dot parse URI. Okay, so this was done. So now if our response dot, we can check our status code using our attribute status code. Now if it's 200, that means our response was received in a proper format. Let's do a JSON decode on the response.body. and after that I'm gonna create separate photo objects and store it in an array of photos. Response json.map. Now here I am gonna do photo.from json e, and then we convert it to toList, right? And then we just return photos. Now in case we get an error, let's throw an exception so that we can print it out. Exception, fail to load photo data. Cool, so our method is ready. Now we need to display the data that we get, right? Let me get rid of all of these. So this is for center, yeah. Let's remove this, and I'm gonna use a future builder class. So future builder helps us to make a asynchronous call from here. So it takes an attribute called future, and we have to assign it a asynchronous method. In our case it's fetch photos, right? And then a builder object to basically loop through the data. So snapshot, this variable will get our what we return here, photos, that is the array or the exception. So in this case, if snapshot has data, so we can just assign list photos is equal to snapshot dot data. And then the reason I am doing this is because why is it giving me the error? Builder error, I think this is okay, yeah, so that is fine. Once we complete it will be good. So the reason I do here, if this is null for some reason, we get 200 but it's empty, so in that case I just forcefully assign it to an empty array so that we don't get any null pointer exceptions. Now I will do return list view because it's an array, so I will display it in a list. Now we get an item builder here. Item builder will take context and index, return column. Okay, so one more thing we need to do here is we need to actually use this Dart package http. In my case I already have it here, but you also need it. Just remember to add it to your pubsec spec YML, right? Now after children I'm gonna create list tile, then leading. Now image dot network photos index. Now let's place a image. So an image will be the thumbnail image we have, then we will show the text, index dot id dot to string, and then we'll do subtitle, and this also takes a string. So photos dot index. Now our title field is already string, so it's fine. Now we give a divider, so there will be some space between each you can say array elements, like each photos. I think this is the column. Okay, oh, why is it giving me error here? Oh, I think I need to close it like this. Okay, now after this we also need to pass item count, so it will be a snapshot data dot length, whatever data we get. I think looks complete. Oh, I think if in case of error we also need to place else if snapshot has error. So in this case we return text saying snapshot dot error, and we also return center child circular progress indicator. So what this is gonna do, indicator as in it's gonna rotate till we get our data back. So because it's an asynchronous call, so the flow is like we as soon as we reload the app, it's gonna call, the future builder is gonna call the fetch photos method, and it's gonna be an asynchronous call. So till the time we get the data, we'll see a circular progress indicator saying okay, let's wait for the data. Once that data is there, like this if condition will get true, and then we'll start displaying in the list view builder. Let's see it in action. Let me refresh this, and we see the circle going on, and now you see the data here. So this is the data, this is the thumbnail, this is the index id, and then this is the string title. Yeah, that's all for the video. It was a very straightforward video of how we can call an API using Flutter. If you guys like this video, give me a thumbs up, follow me on Instagram, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks everyone.